When his sniper rifle jammed, Kyle didn't panic, he got creative. What he improvised with available materials would become one of the most innovative tactical adaptations in military history. Sometimes the best plan is to abandon your plan. The metallic grinding sound that emerged from Kyle's Macmillan TAC 338 at 1,423 hours was every sniper's nightmare. Staff Sergeant Kyle worked the bolt-action mechanism repeatedly, but the rifle refused to chamber another round. After 6 hours of continuous firing in 118-degree heat, the weapon had finally succumbed to thermal expansion that locked the bolt in place. Kyle was positioned on the third floor of a partially destroyed apartment building in eastern Ramadi, providing overwatch support for Marine patrols conducting house-to-house searches in hostile territory. His elevated position offered commanding views of multiple approach routes, but it was also 300 meters from the nearest friendly forces. Through his binoculars, Kyle could see the tactical situation developing below. A squad of Marines from Fox Company was pinned down behind concrete barriers, taking accurate fire from insurgents positioned in buildings across the street. The Marines needed immediate sniper support to suppress enemy positions and enable their withdrawal to safer ground. Overwatch, this is Fox 2, crackled through Kyle's radio with obvious urgency. We're taking heavy fire from multiple positions. Request immediate precision fire support on targets bearing 0-90 degrees from your position. Kyle studied the target area through his optics, immediately identifying 3 insurgent fighting positions that were effectively pinning down the Marine squad. Under normal circumstances, eliminating these targets would require 3 carefully placed shots at ranges between 250 and 320 meters, well within Kyle's capabilities with a functioning sniper rifle. But Kyle's primary weapon was completely inoperative, and his backup equipment consisted of a Glock 19 sidearm, fragmentation grenades, and various tactical gear that wasn't designed for precision long-range engagement. Military doctrine offered no solutions for conducting sniper missions without sniper weapons. Chief Petty Officer Danny Martinez, Kyle's spotter, was positioned 50 meters away with a different line of sight to the target area. Kyle, my rifle's still functional. I can try to engage those positions, but I don't have your precision shooting experience. Kyle considered this option but realized it wouldn't solve the immediate problem. Martinez was an excellent spotter but only an adequate marksman. The precision required to eliminate targets at 300 meters without endangering friendly forces exceeded Martinez's capabilities. Negative, Chief. Those targets are too close to our Marines for anything but perfect shots. I need to figure out another approach. Kyle began conducting the most creative tactical problem-solving session of his military career. He had functional optics, accurate range-finding equipment, and detailed knowledge of the target area. What he lacked was a weapon system capable of delivering precise fire at extended ranges. But Kyle's SEAL training had emphasized adaptability and improvisation under adverse conditions. The key was recognizing that solving tactical problems often required thinking beyond conventional equipment limitations. Kyle opened his equipment pack and began inventorying materials that might be useful for unconventional approaches. For M67 fragmentation grenades, approximately 60 rounds of 9mm ammunition for his sidearm, 200 feet of climbing rope, carabiners, and various demolition materials including C4 plastic explosive. None of these items were designed for precision engagement at 300 meters, but Kyle was beginning to formulate a plan that combined multiple approaches to achieve the required tactical effect. Fox 2, this is Overwatch. I'm experiencing equipment difficulties, but I'm developing an alternative approach. Continue taking cover while I coordinate fire support using unconventional methods. Kyle's plan required precise timing, creative use of available materials, and execution of techniques that weren't covered in any military manual. He would need to eliminate 3 separate targets using methods that compensated for his lack of precision long-range weapons. Kyle's first innovation involved converting his fragmentation grenades into precision-guided munitions using climbing rope and careful trajectory calculation. By attaching rope to the grenades and using his elevated position, Kyle could deliver explosive devices to specific locations with accuracy that approximated targeted strikes. The technique required Kyle to calculate trajectory paths that accounted for the weight of the rope, wind effects on both the grenade and rope, and precise timing for release points that would place the explosives within lethal radius of target positions. Kyle's second innovation involved using his Glock sidearm in ways that maximized its effectiveness beyond normal engagement ranges. While the pistol couldn't match rifle accuracy at 300 meters, Kyle could use suppressive fire techniques and ricocheting shots to create psychological pressure that might disrupt enemy tactical coordination. Kyle began implementing his improvised fire support plan at 1,442 hours. His first grenade, carefully aimed using rope-guided delivery, landed within 5 meters of the primary insurgent position. The explosion eliminated 2 enemy combatants and forced the third to abandon his fighting position. Outstanding, Overwatch, radioed Fox 2. Target 1 neutralized. 2 additional positions still active. Kyle immediately prepared his second improvised strike, carefully adjusting his technique based on lessons learned from the first deployment. The rope-guided grenade system was functioning, but it demanded an exceptional level of precision that tested both his understanding of trajectory and his ability to improvise under pressure. Every element mattered: the tension on the rope, the angle of release, and the timing of the throw had to align perfectly for the grenade to reach its intended target. Kyle synchronized his breathing with the motion of his hands, letting instinct guide him as much as calculation. When the second grenade flew, it landed even closer to its intended mark, detonating with lethal efficiency against the insurgent machine gun nest that had been effectively suppressing the Marine squad. The blast disrupted their defensive posture, sending debris scattering and forcing the enemy to seek cover. The Marines, previously pinned down, now found openings to maneuver. The tactical impact was immediate, but the psychological effect was equally powerful. Remaining insurgents were faced with threats emerging from directions and methods they had not anticipated. Confusion spread through their ranks as they struggled to understand the unseen, unpredictable forces acting against them. Yet Kyle's most innovative solution was still ahead. For the third target, he conceived a technique that combined his sidearm with environmental advantages and the physics of ricochet, producing effects that would have seemed impossible with conventional pistol fire. He quickly surveyed the terrain and identified a concrete wall positioned at an angle between his position and the enemy cluster. By striking it correctly, he could redirect 9mm rounds toward the target indirectly, using the environment as an extension of his weapon. Executing the plan required precise understanding of ballistics and angles. Kyle accounted for the surface texture of the wall, the energy loss of the bullets upon impact, and the predictable behavior of ricocheted rounds. He adjusted his stance, controlled his grip, and fired in measured bursts designed to interact with the wall's surface. Each shot forced the enemy to move or seek cover, disrupting their formation and exposing them to the Marines' line of fire. The effect was not necessarily lethal with every round, but it achieved the objective: control and disruption of enemy movement. Within moments, the combination of the second grenade and the indirect pistol fire neutralized critical enemy positions and reshaped the battlefield. The Marines capitalized on the confusion, advancing under cover of the disarray Kyle had created. His ingenuity demonstrated a crucial principle: in combat, creativity and adaptability can be more decisive than raw firepower alone. By exploiting limited resources and the environment, Kyle transformed unconventional tactics into decisive battlefield advantage, striking fear and confusion into the enemy while maintaining control and momentum for his unit. The technique required Kyle to calculate angles of incidence and reflection that would redirect his pistol rounds toward the target area with sufficient accuracy to achieve suppressive effects. This was ballistic physics applied creatively rather than conventionally. Kyle's improvised ricochet shooting proved remarkably effective. His indirect pistol fire created enough pressure on the final insurgent position that the remaining enemy combatants abandoned their location and withdrew from the engagement area. "All targets neutralized," reported Fox 2 with obvious amazement. "Overwatch, that was the most innovative fire support I've ever witnessed. How did you eliminate those positions without rifle fire?" Kyle was already preparing to relocate from his position, understanding that his improvised techniques had revealed his location to any remaining enemy forces in the area. Fox 2, sometimes you have to adapt your methods to overcome equipment limitations. Mission accomplished using alternative approaches. What Kyle didn't mention was the psychological intensity involved in developing and executing tactical innovations under combat pressure. Each improvised technique had been untested and carried significant risk of failure that could have resulted in Marine casualties. Chief Martinez reached Kyle's position as the immediate tactical situation stabilized. "Chris, what you just did was impossible according to everything we've been taught about weapons employment. You eliminated 3 target positions using grenades and pistol fire at ranges where those weapons aren't supposed to be effective." Kyle was already working on field expedient repairs to his TAC-338, using cleaning equipment and mechanical improvisation to address the thermal expansion problem that had disabled his primary weapon. "Chief, impossible is just a limitation we accept until circumstances force us to find alternatives." Over the following hour, Kyle successfully restored his rifle to functional condition using techniques that weren't covered in standard maintenance procedures. The weapon had jammed under conditions so extreme that standard operating instructions would have recommended abandoning it altogether. Yet Kyle, drawing on an intuitive understanding of mechanical systems, combined partial disassembly with field-expedient adjustments. He used sections of his cleaning kit in ways they weren't designed for, improvised leverage with a snapped piece of metal equipment, and cleared debris from the action using fine motions more akin to surgery than maintenance. His mechanical improvisation had been as creative as his tactical adaptations, demonstrating the kind of comprehensive problem-solving ability that characterized elite warriors. Every adjustment was done under the stress of knowing enemy forces might close in at any moment, yet his hands remained steady, guided by a calm sense of purpose. But Kyle's most significant achievement wasn't restoring his equipment, it was proving that effective combat performance could transcend conventional weapon limitations through creative application of available resources and tactical innovation. In that storm of uncertainty, he demonstrated that a warrior's most important tool wasn't the rifle, but the mind that guided it. His decision not to accept failure as final, to treat broken equipment as a challenge rather than a barrier, embodied the very spirit of adaptability that special operations sought to cultivate but rarely had the chance to test so vividly. The after-action report submitted by Fox Company described Kyle's performance as exceptional tactical adaptation under equipment failure conditions that resulted in successful mission completion using unconventional fire support methods. That sentence alone, dry and bureaucratic as it appeared on paper, captured an event that would echo far beyond the day's mission. The report circulated not only through Kyle's immediate command but was eventually studied by Special Operations Training Commands as an example of innovative problem-solving under combat pressure. Young recruits would one day read summaries of that report in classroom settings, the event becoming a case study in the difference between rigid adherence to doctrine and flexible thinking in the face of chaos. Kyle's improvised techniques were later analyzed by military research teams interested in developing backup capabilities for situations where primary weapon systems failed or were unavailable. Engineers and tacticians sat together in rooms far from the battlefield, replaying descriptions of Kyle's actions, his rope-guided grenade deployment, which allowed him to deliver explosive force without direct line of sight, and his ricochet shooting methods, which used angles and surfaces as substitutes for unobstructed targeting. These techniques, once born of necessity in a moment of crisis, were incorporated into experimental training programs for elite military units. Special operations forces began practicing drills that had once been unthinkable, bouncing rounds off walls to strike concealed positions, or using simple mechanical tools in place of high-tech solutions when systems failed. But for Kyle personally, the equipment failure engagement represented something more significant than tactical innovation. It was proof that exceptional warriors weren't defined by their equipment, but by their ability to adapt and overcome obstacles that would stop less capable individuals. To him, the broken rifle had not been a liability but a test, an unspoken question about his capacity to function when stripped of every advantage. His answer, written in the results of that engagement, was unequivocal. 6 months later, Kyle's improvised combat techniques were being taught to special operations units as essential backup skills for equipment failure scenarios. Entire blocks of instruction were designed around the concept of unconventional precision fire support, a phrase coined to describe the balance between accuracy and creativity that Kyle had demonstrated. His innovations had been documented, analyzed, and incorporated into training programs that would influence military doctrine for years to come. Marines who had never met him practiced rope-deployed grenades in controlled environments, learning that a weapon's failure could be the beginning of new possibilities rather than the end of combat capability. Major consequences of Kyle's improvised engagement extended beyond immediate tactical success. His demonstration that precision effects could be achieved using unconventional methods influenced research into alternative weapon systems and tactical approaches for special operations forces. Procurement officers considered what might happen if new tools were designed with adaptability in mind, rather than rigid function. Tactical planners began revisiting assumptions about battlefield limitations, asking whether unconventional effects might be deliberately trained for instead of accidentally discovered. Kyle's creativity under pressure had revealed capabilities that military planners hadn't previously considered. His success suggested that conventional assumptions about weapon effectiveness and tactical limitations might be more flexible than standard doctrine indicated. He had shown that the battlefield was not defined by what was written in manuals, but by the willingness of those in it to explore beyond doctrine when circumstances demanded. The engagement also reinforced Kyle's reputation as a warrior who could succeed regardless of circumstances. Among his peers, he was no longer just the man with unerring precision, he was now the man who could bend circumstance itself into a weapon. His ability to maintain tactical effectiveness despite equipment failures demonstrated the kind of comprehensive competence that made him invaluable for missions where conventional approaches might not be sufficient. If the mission collapsed into chaos, Kyle was the man commanders trusted to find order in the rubble. Years later, when Kyle reflected on his military career, he would identify the equipment failure engagement as one of his most educational experiences. Not because of the tactical techniques developed, but because it demonstrated that true expertise meant transcending dependency on specific tools or methods. For him, that day was the moment he understood that a rifle was just one channel for effectiveness, the mind and will behind it were the true weapons. Kyle learned that exceptional performance often required abandoning conventional approaches in favor of creative solutions developed under pressure. Military training provided foundational capabilities: marksmanship, field craft, maintenance, but combat effectiveness sometimes demanded innovation that went beyond established doctrine. Doctrine was a baseline, survival demanded imagination. The lesson extended beyond military applications. Kyle's experience demonstrated that individuals who could adapt and improvise under adverse conditions possessed capabilities that exceeded those who depended entirely on conventional methods and established procedures. In that truth lay a broader principle of human performance. The ability to think differently under stress was often the dividing line between failure and success in any field. When Kyle's weapon failed, he discovered that his most important equipment was his ability to think creatively under pressure. That realization would influence his approach to challenges throughout his military career and beyond. In later years, he would mentor younger operators, teaching them not to rely blindly on their gear but to cultivate resourcefulness as their most essential skill. The Marines of Fox Company would always remember the day their sniper eliminated enemy positions using techniques that seemed impossible according to conventional military wisdom. To them, it was more than survival, it was witnessing an act that rewrote their understanding of what one man could accomplish under fire. Kyle had proven that sometimes the most effective weapon was the refusal to accept limitations as insurmountable obstacles. In the end, Kyle's tactical innovations represented something fundamental about elite performance. Exceptional individuals don't just overcome obstacles, they transform obstacles into advantages through creative thinking and relentless adaptation. His broken rifle became a forge for invention, his crisis became a classroom. When the weapon failed, the warrior adapted. And in adapting, Kyle had demonstrated capabilities that transcended any specific piece of equipment or conventional tactical approach. He showed that the truest mark of mastery was not flawless execution under perfect conditions, but the ability to excel when everything went wrong.
See you in the next videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe.